out of the water. So it's really good to get it together. We learned last year actually that the chemicals that they're using in our drinking water, the fluoride, which is actually not just fluoride, it's a chemical called hydrofluorosilicic acid. I find it very hard to say. Fluorosilicic acid, and that has other contaminants, but this chemical was actually banned in the EU as a biocide, meaning it was actually used for pesticide. So it was banned in 2006 because they could produce no toxicological data to show it was safe. So what's banned as a biocide can then be used in the drinking water and sold as a product because it's good for our teeth apparently. So there's no rhyme nor reason to it, and I think the main issue just is, again, getting people onto this and raising their awareness and making sure that we have a very strong voice. Our Minister for Health, Dr. James Riley, he is the man who is, I suppose, in charge of this policy. We also have a junior Minister for Health who has been recently given kind of the authority over this policy, mainly because James Riley has had a huge amount of bad publicity regarding a number of errors within his governance of the Department of Health. So I don't think this man is an advocate for health. I mean, he's not somebody that you would trust with your life. So the Fluoride Action Network, which I'm not sure if anyone is aware of, or you probably are if you're very into the fluoride, which is the fluoridealert.org website run by Paul Connaught and a number of other people, and they critiqued the Forum on Fluoridation, which was set up in Ireland in 2002. And this was basically because there was a campaign ran by a dentist on Macaulay, and he was noticing the amount of dental fluorosis, and they say around 40 to 50% was coming into the practice with dental fluorosis, which is a biomarker that your body has been overexposed to fluoride. So the government, in a response to a lot of opposition against fluoride, said, okay, we can't make any decisions until we set up this forum on fluoridation. So they produced this report, and the Fluoride Action Network have critiqued the report, and they said the most logical conclusion is that the majority of the panel members who worked in some capacity for the government or received their research funding from the same were persuaded to produce a report in favour of this long-standing government policy rather than freely and objectively analysing the information. So, I mean, that's coming from a number of fluoride experts internationally, and they're showing that the forum that's set up in Ireland isn't objectively looking at this issue. So basically, out of that forum in 2004, there was an Irish expert body on fluorides and health established. Now this guy, Dr. Seamus Hickey, is a dentist. It's mainly dentists who have been very pro-fluoride for a long time. They actually a number of the individuals on this body go around internationally promoting fluoride. So it's very biased pro-fluoride, and they aren't looking at the toxicological data. They haven't produced any safety tests. So they're just continuing to say that it's safe and effective at its optimal level, and they're refusing to change their mindset. So just last year, data from the World Health Organization came out, and it was showing the statistics for dental decay. And you can see here Ireland, which actually has, within the Western Europe, it has the worst dental health within the EU, because they're saying that the only reason they add this to the drinking water is to improve dental decay, but we actually have the worst dental decay rates within Western Europe. So it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever that they're maintaining this policy. They're not addressing the real issue of, promotion of education and proper oral hygiene. Instead, they think that, dosing our water with unlicensed, untested chemicals is effective. But the statistics speak for themselves, and they can't dispute these. They're not coming from us, they're coming from the World Health Organization. And we're very proud of our environmental scientist from Cork. I think a lot of you probably heard of Declan Waugh. He produced this report, Human Toxicity, Environmental Impact and Legal Implications of Water Fluoridation, in February of last year. He is an independent environmental scientist. He receives no funding from the government. He has submitted this report to all departments within the government, to the Prime Minister of Ireland, to the President, to all health organisations across the country, all to his own expense. He actually has spent nearly all of his life savings, in fact, working on this now for the past 2 years. And the Irish government are completely ignoring him. One member of the expert body critiqued his report and said that that his information is invalid. Declan's report has been used in Canada last year in 4 cities. They used Declan's report along with other evidence to end water fluoridation. So over 2 million Canadians had fluoride-free water, thanks to Declan's work and other people that have been working against fluoride. And Declan's report is also being used in Israel at the moment in a High Court case because, his report has been appraised by a number of professors of public health policy across the world now, and they're saying that his work is, it's a credit to him, and he's doing what the government have failed to do. I'm not going to go into all the health statistics now, but one of the most shocking things that we found was that in the Republic of Ireland that we have twice the global average of neurological illness, and this is something that is obviously there's no answers given to why this is the case, but fluoridation chemicals have been strongly linked to neurological problems, especially with the uptake of aluminium into the brain, which is strongly linked to Alzheimer's. So Declan has also got if you want to look up Declan's website, it's on enviro.ie, and he has gone through all health statistics comparing the north of Ireland to the south of Ireland, and he was saying that with early onset dementia that we had 450% higher rates of early onset dementia between 39 to 59 in the south compared to the north and the rest of Europe. And also we have in the south of Ireland compared to the north 78% higher rates of depression than we do in the north of Ireland. So across the board in a number of health problems we are statistically alarmingly higher than the north of Ireland. So there's a huge amount of questions and flags being raised to say, look, you haven't done the reviews to see if this is causing these problems. So the best thing, following a precautionary principle, is to stop this policy and let's see do the statistics start to lower, and then we can decide. And as well, one of the most vulnerable sectors of our society in Ireland are our children. And in Ireland, we actually have the highest rate of bottle-fed babies in the world, or not in the world, sorry, within Europe. And there's huge problems then with making up formula milk with the fluoridated water. And the American Dental Association did recommend not to use fluoridated water to make up formula milk. But then in 2007, they had to, you see so many people against fluoride were using that then. So I think there was a bit of, words were said, and they kind of watered down their recommendation to say people can choose. And with people that are using fluoridated water to make up their formula milk, they are giving their babies alarmingly high levels of fluoride. The Institute of Medicine in the US recommends babies to consume a tiny 10 micrograms of fluoride per day, which would be what would be exposed within breast milk. But infants consuming fluoridated water consume up to 700 to 1,200 micrograms of fluoride, so over about 100 times more than the recommended amount. And obviously in Ireland we have the highest level of bottle-fed babies, and this is a time when the blood-brain barrier hasn't formed, and so it's a very vulnerable time for neurotoxicity, and it's not something that should be taken lightly. And then they're saying it's good for teeth, but they're avoiding the fact that dental fluorosis is now affecting 24 to 50% of all Irish children and teenagers. And this condition is the white marks on the teeth, which is a sign that the body has been overexposed, and this is only the outer skeleton. So if it has the ability to do this to the cellular structure of the teeth, then obviously it's going to have an impact on the rest of the body. And also another thing which I think is great, something that you can use here in your campaign, is about the fact that your water supply, when you're using fluoridated water within your community, is going to be contaminating the food supply. So in the north of Ireland there had been a time where 2 cities had been fluoridated, and I spoke with the man Walter Graham, who was responsible for ending fluoridation in those 2 cities, and he was responsible for getting all the councils across Ireland to vote no, because they were trying to introduce it nationwide. So he said that there was actually a business that was in one of the areas, and they actually got behind the campaign because they said that they would pull out if they were to add fluoride to the drinking water, because they were very concerned that it might affect their business. And within the EU, fluoride is regarded as a medicine, so you cannot export foods regarding a medicine which have never been tested for safety. So I think it's a good kind of bit, because people respond to if it's going to impact on their wallet. So I think if you can kind of get behind different businesses that would feel, right, if we are going to be adding fluoride to the drinking water, it's not just about teeth, it's going to be affecting everything from food distribution to food processing, everything. So it really is an issue that is affecting everyone, and I think if you can get people on board with that. So we have fluoride cheese available in Ireland for those who don't have enough fluoride in their diet. You can actually access all of our lovely foods. So that's obviously something that's very concerning them when they're giving the water to the animals, it's going into the meats, it's everywhere. It's very hard for people to avoid it, and it's very expensive for people to avoid it. We have to install in my home a reverse osmosis filter which cost over €600, and to maintain that every year it's €150, which is not effective. It's not cost effective for everyone. I have a friend of mine who has very bad thyroid problems and has ongoing health problems because of that, and he is in a position financially where he cannot afford to install a filter. So if they say it's good for people, you know, for inequality, it's not, because it puts people who are most at risk within the poor income bracket to be so vulnerable that they can't even afford to avoid and filter and buy bottled water. So it really is an issue where it's just something that I feel is most unethical, because when it is in your water supply, it really is so hard to get people to change. So I think you are in a great position here where you can stop it from happening, and hopefully with the High Court case that I am taking myself, we hope to be a success, and that will then have a knock-on effect on here, and vice versa. We can all link in together. So I'll just invite Shane is going to cover the rest of the presentation. He's going to be covering about the legal case that we're taking, and then we can just do any questions then at the end. Okay?
Thank you. I presume everybody is quite tired. We've been here now almost an hour, so I will be very quick with this. Just following on from what Aisling said there, basically, I want to talk very quickly about the legal aspect of water fluoridation in Ireland. The Irish government introduced the Health Fluoridation of Water Supplies Act in 1960. Basically, this act was introduced in 1960 by the government at the time, who were being lobbied by the American government. They wanted to, you know, obviously they wanted to promote the scheme worldwide, and if they could do it in Ireland, they would, you know, they hoped at the time that they would, you know, sort of to push this scheme elsewhere throughout the world. So I guess they started with Ireland in 1960. They drew up the act in 1960. It was put into law, but they didn't actually start fluoridation of water supply until 1964. The reason was because there was a legal battle in 1963 which prevented them to, basically it just was a kind of a preventative at the time. It was it just stalled the introduction. Very quickly as well, before I move on to the next slide, in 2002 this forum on fluoridation, similar to what happened here in Southampton, there was a public survey basically done. A number of people, I think a couple of thousand people were questioned, and they asked them about the water fluoridation policy. 89% of the population voted against it, said, you know, they objected to this policy of water fluoridation. But of course, like in Southampton, this wasn't taken into account at all, and then the expert body on fluorides and health was set up, and of course, as you know, today we still continue to have fluoride in our water. As I just mentioned, the Health Fluoridation of Water Supplies Act was set up in 1960. As a part of this act, Section 6 basically called for the impact of on human health of fluoride should be tested. Now this has never ever been done in Ireland at all. They did set up the forum of fluoridation, but they did not really cover any of the health implications of fluoride in our water supply. So they kind of really came up with haven't come up with anything at all. Even though there are studies worldwide to show that fluoride is having an impact on our health, they disregarded that. And as I said, no safety tests have been conducted. The main point really that I do want to speak about is, I suppose after listening to Aisling's talk, I guess it does sound a little bit bleak, as if the outlook is a bit bleak. It was, I guess, in 1963-64 when this lady Gladys Ryan, she took a High Court case to basically to prevent the fluoride from actually being put into our water. As I said, the case went to the High Court, and because I guess the whole of America was watching, with bated breath, looking at Ireland, and they were afraid that, if a decision was made in Ireland that the water fluoridation policy was scrapped before the introduction, it would look very badly towards them. People within their own country would start looking at them, and they would start questioning, well, look, is this safe? Because the Irish have found that it's not safe. So what they did was they basically came up and in the High Court, and they said to this lady, well, actually, you know what? You don't have any access. You don't have any legal right to pumped water. Now, she did actually have pumped water coming to her home at that time, but she had no legal right to it. Because she had no legal right to it, they said, well, therefore, you don't have to drink this. And if you do want to drink it, well, it's as simple as putting a filter on your tap. If you can't afford a filter on your tap to remove this fluoride from the water, well, then we suggest that you go to your local pump. Now, they advised her that within about 6 miles of where she lived, there was a local pump, local supply, that she could go with her bucket and she could fill it up, and then if she wanted, she could drink this water. It's a bit sort of ancient, kind of, medieval, dark time sort of a... Anyway, because of the fact that she wasn't entitled to this water pumped into her home, they said to her, this is the alternative and this is what you can do. Her argument was, well, look, I cannot avoid this. If I have to go to a hospital, if I go to a cafe, go to a friend's home, she said, wherever I go, I cannot avoid this fluoridated water. But they felt that her argument wasn't really strong enough because, of course, they had this expert witness from the United States. His name was Dr. Harold Hodge. Dr. Hodge, I don't know, has I suppose everybody by your reaction have obviously all heard of him. He was the main witness, and it was quite funny actually to read. If you read back on the paper, I guess the court findings, the judge certainly seems to have taken a kind of a liking, a shine to him, because he said, at the end of his evidence, he made a special gesture to thank him for his time and for coming over. And this particular case went on for 65 days, so it was quite a lengthy case, and because of the length of the time it went on, the case was it's quite major in Irish legal history. And he just said to him he'd like to thank him for his time, and he'd like to thank him for putting for speaking in sort of layman's terms, not putting everything into kind of complicated medical terms. But as it has transpired in the 90s, Dr. Hodge worked on this program called the Manhattan Project. But in 1963, when he gave evidence, he was withholding quite a large amount of evidence because it was classified military information. So because when this information became declassified in the 1990s, now they've started to call into question the witness with the testimony that he has given. So basically, the judge said, he found that really liked Dr. Hodge's evidence that he gave, and really felt that he swayed him to believe that fluoride and water fluoridation wasn't, it wasn't going to be harmful. So unfortunately, Gladys Ryan, she lost her case at the High Court. Then she went on to appeal it in the Supreme Court, where again, unfortunately, they rejected her appeal. And then in 1964, they began to fluoridate the waters and have been doing so. So it's been 49 years that it has been in Ireland. So basically what it means for us, as I said, I mean, you know, the outlook was sounded a little bit bleak there for a moment, but it's not. We plan on suing the state again, following the footsteps of the 1963 case Gladys Ryan. A lot has changed since then. A lot more medical information has become available to prove that, you know, fluoride is actually a lot more dangerous for our health. In 2002, the European Court of Justice ruled that it actually, in fact, is a medication, and therefore, by that token, it is mass medication by putting fluoride into the water. What we were very, very lucky that we have a pro bono legal team, so we have a number of barristers who are working on this on a pro bono basis. They're really offering a lot of their time to work on this. We have a solicitor also. At the moment, what we're doing is we're preparing the court papers, so we're going to file them within the next 2 months, June, July. Therefore, the court case will more than likely come up in 2014. We're hoping that when we're not saying if we win, when we win, that it will have a major knock-on effect worldwide. The Americans were going to start, of course, no doubt, they're going to be back looking at Ireland again. The focus is going to be on Ireland in 2014. If it goes wrong for them, they're going to start questioning it elsewhere. We hope that for this particular reason, in the UK, that they will start looking into the water fluoridation. They look into it a lot with sort of look at it a lot with greater, I guess, look into greater depth, but with a hope, really, kind of. We really hope that it will sort of end, at least it will end it in Ireland. Elsewhere, we hope it will have, as I say, a major knock-on effect. What we're doing, I'll very quickly go through it. The Irish Constitution is a written constitution, and basically what we're taking the case under is Article 40.3, subsection 1. And it basically says that our state guarantees in its laws to respect as far as practicable by its laws to defend and vindicate the rights of the citizen, which is basically, essentially, when you read into it in a legal way, I guess what it means is the state will respect your rights of bodily integrity. A couple of other different, I suppose we can't just put all of our eggs into one basket, so we're going to take the case under a number of other different articles in the Constitution. The medical precautionary principles basically says, look, the onus is on those who are medicating us to prove that it is safe. If you can't prove it's safe, well, then you have to follow the precautionary principle, which would suggest that you scrap the programme. And then, of course, we've got the European Convention on Human Rights. We're going to follow that as well. And actually, in fact, which is quite interesting for both Ireland and for other EU member states, especially the United Kingdom and of course here in Southampton as well, that fluoridation of our water supplies actually is in breach of 31 EU directives. Because it is a breach of 31 EU directives, and EU law has supremacy over all individual state laws, well, I think this is very, very strong. And for this reason, if we do win our case based on either the Irish Constitution or the EU directives, it hopefully will be picked up, flagged in the EU, and it will send a message out, especially to Greater Europe, and certainly maybe to America as well. They may look into it, they may not. We just take care of ourselves for the moment. Lastly then, I suppose, what we're going to do is, because of course the campaign, the Girl Against Fluoride campaign, is a twofold. It's a legal battle as well as an awareness campaign. We're going to, in the next 12 months, we hope to continue the awareness campaign, constantly working on new strategies, new ideas. So of course, I mean, Aisling has given you a lot of her publicity stunts that she has carried out to date. So if anybody has any ideas, we would be delighted to know. Of course, I mean, we do have a very, very, very fortunate to have a pro bono legal team. But unfortunately, the other side of that is then that we do have to raise quite a substantial amount of money, between 30 and 50,000, and that is just basically to have expert witnesses, come to speak to us and to give testimony in the court. So we continue working on that for the next 12 months. And lastly, I just want to thank you very much for coming here today, and for Anna and Stephen and all the Hampshire Against Fluoridation for having us here. And if any of you are on Facebook or Twitter or would like to get in touch with us, we really would appreciate your support, especially from this side. I think it's great. And yeah, so if you have any questions, myself and Aisling or anybody, we would be delighted to answer them. So thank you very much.
Just before we finish, we're also working, a few members of the team are working on a documentary at the moment, and they're covering from the 60s, the first court case, to the present day, and the very last part of it will be when we file the papers into the High Court, and it will be to be continued. So it is going to be something that we'll be sharing. It's not for raising money or anything, but they're just wanting to spread awareness. So we're going to be launching that anyway, hopefully within the next couple of months. And we will have a website, so if you get in touch anyway, we'll be able to send you out all the information, and I will be heavily involved now in contact with this group, and I think it's great to just create the links now and make it a global effort. So.
A couple of things to say before we start. We'll open it up to questions. Just to say, well, Mike Thornton at the back has joined us in the new MP for Eastleigh, so hopefully he might contribute as well. But to say, one thing about the legal situation here is there was a case in Scotland brought in the 80s which ruled that fluoride was being used as a medication, and since then that means that it would have to be tested for safety, and as it's never been tested for safety, it's never been put into Scotland. So fluoride is not going to Scotland. But because that's Scottish law and it's not English law, we'd have to take a case in England, which would involve several hundred thousands of pounds to do, which means we can't afford at the moment unless someone has a nice deep wallet. And the second thing is just I actually went to Kerry a few years ago and I did a house swap with some people, and they had a tank with some fish in it, and it's pretty dirty water, so I thought I'll do them a favour, I'll put the dirty water out and put some clean water in from the tap. Next day, they're all dead.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise at the time what it was, but it probably was the fluoride in there.
Yeah, because you have to use reverse osmosis water for the fish tanks to keep them alive. But
well, it killed all the fish, so. Anyway, any questions, please? Raise your hand. Okay.
Has anyone yet invented any form of filterization to extract fluoride from water?
Yes.
Just so everyone can hear, he's asking whether there is an extraction system to remove the fluoride from the water, a filtration system. There is something called reverse osmosis. Reverse osmosis, which is a very strong filtration system. It removes just about everything from the water, apart from water. It's very wasteful because it chucks away a lot of the water. It's sort of like 6 times the amount you actually use is flushed down the sink. And so it's not very efficient and it's expensive to install, but it's the only system. If you put in just a normal filter, it won't work. No. So it has to be reverse osmosis.
Yes.
Yes.
We also have activated alum filters, which are effective as well and don't waste water.
Activated alum? I've not heard of that one.
That's the alternative.
Right.
And you can buy a filter for each contaminant.
Right.
So if you just want to take out the fluoride, the product water contains as much good minerals as tap water, if you think tap water's got good minerals in, that is. Yeah. And we use both types in the West Midlands.
Okay, so do you know how much activated alum?
It's about the same price.
About the same price?
So coming down in price, about £120 for the full thing, including the filter and membranes, all the filters.
Okay.
And then you have to pay the plumber perhaps to
install it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, if I can come back a moment. My wife has just reminded me that the present system that we had is exactly the system that you said, reverse osmosis.
All right.
We did have it.
We had it, but all of a sudden it stopped working. We called in the company that fitted it some 20 years ago, and they did all the tests, because they supplied us with new filters regularly, every 6 months. Some only had to be a year. And they said that the problem was that our water supply, the pressure had dropped. So I called in Southern Water and they did a test of it. And sure enough, they had dropped the pressure from 2.5 down to 1.5.
Right.
So the machine no longer works.
All right, so that's interesting. It only works when there's a decent pressure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask another question? Yeah.
I was just wondered if it'd be possible, maybe on one of the websites or maybe on some of the information that you have, whether it might be possible to expand a little bit and give a bit more information about the 31 EU directives, which apparently the introduction of fluoride is in breach of, because I hadn't heard of this, and that sounds like quite a major.
Yeah, if you go on enviro.ie, and that's Declan Wall's website, and you can download his report for free, and that's the human toxicity, environmental impact, and legal implications. So the very last section of his report is all to do with the EU directives. So you can get.
I actually spoke with a barrister about 2 days ago, and Declan has actually mentioned 33 EU directives, but this barrister reckons it's actually 31 that are relevant. He may have read two EU directives, misread them, so misinterpreted them at least.
Okay.
We heard that a day or so ago Sinn Féin brought a legal action against it, and they're going to repeal. They want to repeal, but not only do they want to repeal, but they want to make it so that the people who are putting fluoride in the water could possibly go to prison. They will certainly be fined. I wonder whether you knew anything about that, and whether you're working with Sinn Féin on that.
Can you hear at the back what's being asked?
Yeah.
Well, basically, this happened 2 days ago. She wanted. I'll just very quickly repeat. A political party in Ireland called Sinn Féin. They have introduced a new bill into the Parliament, which they want to reverse the mandatory water fluoridation. The thing about this is, as far as I'm aware, because Sinn Féin are actually not in government, they are opposition party. The reason I think that they have introduced this bill is just simply to get a debate going within the Parliament, because in the last couple of months, actually the only time that it has really been brought up over the last couple of months is since Ashton's campaign has been developed. They never really spoke about it before then. It was really never talked about. Some particular, we call them TDs, they're the equivalent of the UK's MPs. They would ask questions randomly over the past, but I mean, there was not really much heed was paid to them at all. I don't think people took any notice. So what this new bill really is going to do is it's going to introduce a discussion, a debate amongst the current government, the opposition parties, and what they hope will happen is that a person, whoever puts fluoride chemicals into our water supply, will actually face up to 5 years imprisonment. It will, because they're not in government, it won't happen. Unless it's unless it's adopted by the present government, but unlikely.
But it gives us great manoeuvrage now, because it's kind of fresh topic, and what we're doing now, we've built up quite a big database nationwide, and we develop template letters that people can download, and we're getting everyone to send them in to their public representatives. So it's the time for us all to push with our local ministers and with our local councils. And also another piece of news, a couple of weeks ago, a town council in Skibbereen, which is a small town in Cork, the town council voted unanimously to end water fluoridation immediately. Obviously they can't do so, but what they do hope to achieve is a major push nationwide to get the councils to start to vote against fluoride, to lobby the government. So we're following through, we're working closely now with the councillors in Skibbereen to make sure that their motion that they're sending through is being received, and that the information that the councils are receiving is substantial enough that they understand the issue. So we're giving them information about fluoride in a very condensed format, because Declan Wall, the environmental scientist, has been sending out correspondence to all councillors across the country, but they find it very overwhelming because they're not scientifically minded. Most people, it would go over their head. So what we're trying to do is, obviously there is a huge amount of science and you need to have that, but it also needs to be explained very simply. So we're working now with the councils to kind of get this information out and just keep pushing now, because I think there seems to be a tide building, and you can see people are taking notice of it, And even the barristers on the case are saying that people are now bringing up fluoride in conversation who never would have brought it up. You know, it seems to be something now that's penetrating the consciousness of the public domain. So it's a really positive time, and I think it will be, you know, it's going to be very beneficial for Southampton as well, with all the work that is happening in Ireland.
Yes, yeah. You okay? Yeah, behind, yes, you're doing this first.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've been involved in
Sorry.
this issue for about over 23 years. What I want to know is the real reason why the pro-fluoride people are so keen to put it without drinking it. What's the real reason? And there's been a bit of evidence in the past that the Nazis, Hitler and co, deliberately fluoridated the occupied countries in order to tranquilize the populations. And at this point, I'll sit down.
Just to answer quickly that one, obviously we don't know exactly what their real reasons are because they seem very odd, whatever they are. But I think it comes down to 50 years ago when it was first decided, it was a political decision to do fluoride, to recommend water fluoridation, so it became government policy. And from then on, all government, the machinery in government supports water fluoridation. So anything that's said against water fluoridation, they say no, it's fine. And they just carry on as long as they can until it's so blindingly obvious that people are dying from it that they might possibly change them. They don't. And the other thing, of course, is there's such a massive benefit to the companies producing this fluoride because they can sell it to put in our water.
And the shareholders.
And the shareholders.
The dividend they get is very large.
So they spend a lot of money researching things and come up with positive things about fluoride, and they hide anything that's not positive to fluoride. They spend a lot of money lobbying the politicians. They spend a lot of money making sure that they keep on getting this big, highly profitable sale of fluoride, which is an industrial toxin, and put it in our water. Okay, sorry, purple Jeff, yeah. Yes, no, you first.
This gent mentioned Germany. It's also known that fluoride is used to produce nerve gases that can be used in warfare. And what I want to know is, if they put this in our water, which I pay my rates for potable water, can we refuse to pay our water rates?
Yeah. Well, that's something that we're doing in Ireland because we actually don't pay water rates at the moment. They're trying to introduce them next year, so that's part of one of our strategies. Is basically we're going to say we're not paying for the water if you're adding fluoridated chemicals to it. And interestingly enough, about politics, within Ireland, we found out recently from a member of the government that they have installed reverse osmosis filters in all of the water units in the Irish government.
Can I just bring Mike Thornton here because he put his. No, go. All right.
Just a quick one. Do our Irish friends know if Guinness is produced with fluoridation?
Yes.
Yeah.
It contains 0.8 parts per million fluoride. That Guinness, anyway, that is produced in Ireland. There are there is Guinness that is produced in Liverpool as well, I think.
Do you want to just come in there?
I want to say a couple of things. I think.
Do you want to come up front and we can talk?
Okay. Right.
Very serious.
Nice to meet you.
Oh yeah, nice to meet you. Hello.
You're not a strip off now.
No.
I did like the episode of The Lovely Ladies.
Oh yeah.
I'd just like to say, I think there's a couple of things. Please don't be too cynical about us politicians. A lot of us do actually care about our constituents, and we actually do try to work for the benefit of you. So please don't just assume all we're there to do is to try and poison you. That's not really, honestly, my intention to get elected to poison my constituents. It might reduce my, my majority by a bit. I think as an MP, I'm no scientist, and I don't know as much as you guys do. When Eastleigh Borough Council voted against enforced fluoridisation by Southern Water, when I was a councillor there, I actually abstained, not because I wasn't a lazy abstention, because I didn't understand the issue. But my point has always been that I don't know about science, but I know about democracy. And it's totally clear that every councillor has voted against it. Now, councillors tend to vote against things if enough people in their wards tell them that they don't like it. So it's pretty evident that from that it's not an issue you don't want fluoride in your water. Now, I don't think it would really matter if fluoride was the best thing since sliced bread. I don't think it would matter if fluoride was proved to be 100% safe. I don't think it would matter if it proved that it was the best, most effective way of treating caries in children, which I think your evidence shows it isn't. But even if it was, if you don't want it, you shouldn't have it. Now, the other thing I'd like to say is the Child Smile campaign in Scotland. At the moment, I'm going to start working on trying to get more support for breakfast clubs in schools, because we know that children do better in school if they had a good breakfast. Might be an idea to say, why don't we teach the children how to brush their teeth? Yes. How many of you have children or grandchildren or know of schools that have breakfast clubs?
And they do clean their teeth, they're told to clean them.
They clean them, and are they actually supervised cleaning their teeth?
No, I brought it up with the head and they're going to be.
So that is the sort of thing you could all work on, and the breakfast clubs, usually the most children who go to breakfast clubs are the children who are from the less advantaged areas, which is probably the one with the most, but the ones, not always.
I agree with that totally.
Okay, but I don't necessarily mean that that's where all children go to, but they are there. It does help very much the children in the areas where the parents haven't got time to cook them breakfast.
That's more the case.
And if they don't have time to cook them breakfast, they probably don't have time to supervise their teeth brushing. So if you put the two together. So these are the sort of things I think we should work on. So if we can concentrate on positive, and then you were saying, concentrate on not negative. You never win by being negative, do you?
No.
You win by being positive. So I think the positive attitude is, we don't want it because we'll do this instead. I think that is the way to win your argument, is to be positive and not negative. People don't get fed up with negative, so be positive. And I think this is tremendous. I suspect that Hitler's desire to sedate its occupied country didn't work too well when you see the amount of resistance that went on in the European Second World War. Obviously it wasn't very effective. But I do think that it's a question of democratic choice. I don't know the science, but I do know democracy, and I think democracy is what you need to work on here.
Are you going to look into the science?
Yes, I will, but I really don't, that's not my point. My point, a lot of other people do that, you know about that. My point is, if you don't want it, you shouldn't have to have it.
Can I just ask in that point, because you're actually my MP.
Right.
Two things. One is, you're talking about democracy when 3/4 of the local population, most of which knew what they were talking about when they did their research, said no